Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is George Wallace Jr. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the debacle that's becoming ASU. And Mike Hubbard's criminal defense attorney sits down with the media. Come hither, said the spider to the fly. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today we have a special guest, my lovely wife, Susan Britt, and the associate producer. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. It's nice to be on this side of the camera every now and then.
Yeah, it's good to have you here.
And Charlotta's in Chicago.
Charlotta's in Chicago.
With teenagers, no less.
And Claire is stuck in traffic somewhere.
That's egregious.
That's just egregious.
Anyway, the governor had kind of a bad week. The press jumped on a statement that he made in Washington County where he alluded to the fact, at least they said, that he wanted to raid the Education Trust Fund so he could finance more incentives to bring business to Alabama. That's not what he said, totally, is it, Barry?
It's not what he said. What he said was that whenever we do these incentive packages, it seems like the Education Trust Fund naturally is the one that benefits because that's who gets the income tax, the sales tax, and those types of things. And I think what he said is we need to find a way to use that base, if they're going to be the ones that benefit, use that base as the base of the incentive packages. That didn't mean let's go out and raid the trust fund. It meant let's find creative ways to get this done. And he came out very clearly and said, actually, at the end of it, I am not going to have any dollars taken from the Education Trust Fund. We're not going to reduce it in any manner whatsoever, and that's not what was reported.
ALReporter.com, we did get the story straight. We called the governor, and he talked to us at length, didn't he, Susan?
He did. And what the rest of the media had tried to do was say that he explicitly said we're going to take money out of the Education Trust Fund to fund these incentive programs, which is not what he was about
But that's
at all.
what the headline said.
Right.
I mean, it was
Exactly.
totally irresponsible journalism.
I'm not sure how they could hear what he said and then take away what
I'm not
they
sure
wrote.
they did hear that.
Well, the Democrats were all over that one. I
Of
mean, they were
course.
sent editorial after editorial.
yeah.
Oh, Bentley's raiding the trust fund. And teachers were upset. They were very
Well, they
upset.
did an online poll on AL.com, and 90% of the people disagreed that Governor Bentley should be taking things out of the Education Trust Fund. They disagree with that approach. The problem is that's not his approach.
right,
right.
and that's not what he said.
Bentley
believe
told me I will never take any money out of the trust fund, and I want to give teachers and workers in education a raise next year.
And he said also that teachers have no better friend in Montgomery than him.
Well, they don't have many friends in Montgomery. Henry Mabry and maybe Dr. Bentley, that'd be it.
Well, and the state employees are just finding out they're going to get another cut in
Yeah.
pay.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, downsizing government or right-sizing government doesn't mean it all has to occur on the backs of the employees, does it, Barry?
No, and that's the news coming out this week showing that the health insurance costs continue to rise. We're all feeling that. You know, the state's certainly not immune to that, but it sounds like the plan is to pass that back on to the state employees again and further reduce the amount of their take-home pay for like the fourth time in 7 years.
Well, we have to attract good people to government, and that's not the way to do it, is it,
No,
Jack?
it's not. It's not. I mean, that sends them a bad message that you're underappreciated. Because they haven't had a raise in a long time.
And a lot of them are working 2 or 3 jobs where they've alleviated other positions through attrition.
Right.
And they've asked the employees that's
Yeah,
still
to accept
remaining
more
to accept more
responsibility.
responsibility, but yet less pay.
But they can turn around and spend, you know, $1 million on software or $200,000 on desks.
Senate chamber.
$15 million on this learning through sports,
Yeah.
and $100,000 on new signs at the border. I mean,
We've got to get rid of the waste, not just the people, right?
right.
One of the things that's been a hot topic for the Democrats over the last several weeks, and we'll continue to see it, is this expanding Medicaid. I hosted an event, or was the moderator at an event, where prominent Democrats and hospital folks came together and talked about the need to expand Medicaid. Is this a winnable thing for them?
No.
No.
No. I mean, that is not going to win the hearts and minds of Alabamians anytime soon. And that's, if Parker Griffith wants to make the entire campaign about the expansion of Medicaid, that's a losing formula. Any of these, there's an independent candidate that we interviewed the other day that said he's going to take that as, that's going to be his issue, expansion of Medicaid. That is not a winning issue in these conservative districts, and especially not statewide.
I just think a majority, I agree with Barron, I think a majority of Alabamians don't, that's the last thing they want to hear.
But UAB said that they did a study that showed that this would prosper everyone in the state, didn't they, Susan?
They did, and then unfortunately Troy State came out and did not use the same amount of facts that UAB did, and did a counter study that debunked what was said in the UAB study, which has caused a lot of confusion.
Well, that study was paid for by the Koch brothers' seat
Yes, it was.
there, and I think that's been proven to be a fairly inaccurate report, don't you think?
Well, I don't know about the accuracy of the reports. I think philosophically, Alabamians are very conservative. Medicaid is viewed as an entitlement program. We're all about entitlement reform, getting people off of entitlement programs. And when you're running around saying, I want to throw another 300,000 people on an entitlement program, most people's heads draw back and they don't want to participate.
Yeah. Well, we don't appreciate the federal government coming down here and messing with us or telling us what to do. I mean, the PSC, the Attorney General, and a bunch of folks went to Atlanta this week to testify before the EPA. That was a big deal, wasn't it, Susan?
It was a big deal. They're trying to keep the EPA. We have about 5,000 to 6,000 coal jobs here in Alabama. People don't really realize what an industry it is here and how important that is to so many families. And so they're trying to keep the EPA from putting too many more standards on the coal industry, and good luck.
I mean, this could shut it down, couldn't it?
Yeah, but going over to testify before the EPA is like making a speech to Helen Keller. These people don't care that we're a pro-coal state. They're not going to listen to Southern pro-coal state. They don't care what we think. Unfortunately,
they're going to do what they're going to do. You get blowback for saying this. If Obama had his way, we wouldn't be burning any coal. Period.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
And if we don't push back at some level against this, and the EPA is his radical environmental wing, if we don't push back against that, they are going to come in here and make coal unaffordable.
Well, the groups that were there, the Sierra Club came out in full force, got to testify quite a bit. The other groups on the conservative side, they really didn't get much track there.
That shouldn't surprise anybody.
No,
really.
no.
This administration is so anti-industry and industrial development. It's crazy.
Well, what do they think we're going to do for jobs? I mean,
I don't know that they want us to have.
I don't think
We're
they
a
really
red
care
state.
about
I
jobs
wanna
in
put some
Alabama.
matters to them.
Well, listen, we got to get out of here. Coming up next on The V, our guest is George Wallace Jr. You're watching The V. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Preventing wildfires. That's all Smokey wants for his 70th birthday.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics, where our guest today is George Wallace, Jr. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Bill. Good to be with you.
You have written a book, Governor George Wallace, The Man You Never Knew. Everyone says it's fascinating because you get into things that we, the public, don't really know. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Bill, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I've tried to write about his life and my family's life in a very introspective way. I think it's very revealing in many ways, hopefully very interesting. But I tried to write about his entire journey, not just a stop or two along the way, because I realized more than anyone that my father is largely defined by a couple of incidents in his political life. But there was so much more to his journey. And so I think that I've been able to accomplish that, and I'm glad that I finished it.
Sitting down and writing a book is not easy work.
No.
Most people think they want to write one, but never had. You had such an interesting topic. One of the interesting things that's in the book is you talk about the march from Selma.
Right.
Would you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of folks are confused.
Well, one of the things that bothered my father the most in his life was the violence at the bridge in Selma.
Right.
And the fact is that his orders were disobeyed at the bridge by Al Lingo, who was his colonel of the Department of Public Safety, and Sheriff Jimmy Clark from Dallas County. His orders were to allow the marchers to march, and if they did so, to protect them until he could contact President Johnson to determine how to protect these folks, because unbeknownst to many people, rumors were swirling about racist groups who planned to be in the tree line along Highway 80 with snipers. So no one knew if that would occur or not, but those were the rumors. But his orders were disobeyed, and Bob Ingram, who was a young reporter for the Montgomery Advertiser at the time, was in my father's office when he got word about what happened at the bridge. And Bob Ingram wrote, and Bob was friendly with my family, never a political supporter, but friendly, wrote that he'd never seen a man as enraged as he saw my father when he learned about what happened at the bridge. And that is something that my father's always blamed for, but he never intended. His orders were disobeyed. And it bothered him so much that over the years he called John Lewis, who's a friend of mine, and he talked emotionally, as John Lewis has written in his memoirs, about the fact that that was not his plan for anyone to be injured at the bridge. So I appreciate your bringing that up, because that it doesn't fit the narrative of some of my father's harshest critics, and I understand that, but the truth is the truth. My father, as charismatic and dynamic as he was, never ever advocated violence. You can't find it, you can't cite it, you can't document it for me. He never did. So that's one incident that he was regretted deeply and did until the day he died.
Your father is the most well-known Alabamian and one of the most well-known Americans. Growing up next to him and being his son, what was that like? Because most of us never have that type of experience.
He was a fascinating man in so many ways, and I've written about this. He, I think, had more energy than anyone I've ever known, and he was, his dedication of purpose and his drive was extraordinary to be around. He was a brilliant man and an energetic man, a man who cared deeply about the South and the people of the South. He had grown up, having been born in 1919 in the Depression South, the part of the region of our country Roosevelt called the nation's #1 economic problem. So he saw suffering, he felt suffering. And he was driven, I think, largely politically to help alleviate and eliminate some of that suffering and raise the standard of people's, enhance the quality of people's lives. And I think that made a mark on him. But he was a man who loved the people of Alabama and the South, and I think something about his populist message as I was growing up stirred something in me. His dedication to help the average working people and his sensitivity for people who suffer in so many ways made a deep impression on me.
Well, I think today many folks would agree with his philosophy then of distrusting the federal government. We see a lot of that now. What we don't see, though, very much are conservative-style Southerners. That's kind of how I remember folks like that, that also have a populist message and want to lift all the folks. Your dad was very much that. He cared about all the people.
All the people, and had a deep sensitivity for people who suffer in so many ways. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying, and I think that his message today would resonate if he was with us. I really believe it would.
A lot of people don't know your dad started things like the 2-year college system. He started the public television, first public television in the state. I mean, that people don't remember all that.
No, well, it's been so long ago, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I think he was proudest of the 2-year college system of anything. And the genesis of that was when he was a small boy in Clio, Alabama, in the mid-20s. He would hear his father and grandfather, who was a prominent doctor, talk about the need for, as they called it at the time, technical training.
Right.
And that came to be our 2-year college. It started when he was in the legislature and finished when he was governor the first term. The free textbook program to help our young people go to school was important as well. But his initiatives were dedicated to helping the economy and lift people's lives.
I heard of an incident where your dad appeared in Madison Square Garden, and I was hoping you might share a little bit about that with us.
Tremendous rally in 1968. I was not with him at that rally, but I got firsthand reports. It was a huge crowd, had a huge crowd. It was packed. Thousands of people on the outside listening to his speech on loudspeakers. And the security personnel there said for several years it was the most demonstrative crowd they'd ever had at the Madison Square Garden. But 1968 was a very interesting year for him, and that was a dynamic rally. It was unbelievable, unbelievable.
I have a few more questions, but before we get to those, tell us how we get your book.
Well, Bill, if people will go to our website, George Wallace Jr., that's with JR, GeorgeWallaceJr.com. It can be ordered there, and if they'd like for me to sign it, there's a place for instructions for me to sign it, and we'll get it out to them. So I hope they'll consider ordering it.
We've got about 30 seconds. You told me a story about meeting Gary Sinise, who played your dad in an award-winning miniseries. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Spent some time with him a few weeks ago at Lakewood Ranch in Florida. He had a concert, and he told me it was one of the most intriguing parts he'd ever played, and that was an interesting conversation for me.
Well, I want to thank you for being our guest. Thank you for revealing the inner workings of your dad's life and your family. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Bill.
You're watching The V. Our guest has been George Wallace Jr. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications Video Production Services for all your video production needs.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Hey everybody! Heart disease affects 1 in every 3 women in America, but you can fight back. There's no time to lose. Mothers, sisters, daughters, families, and friends, it's time to shout louder, stand stronger, and demand change. Let's go!
To the Batmobile. Dang it.
To the invisible jet.
Dang it.
Together, we can put an end to heart disease. It's time to go red for women. I could use your help. Yeah! Learn more more from the American Heart Association at www.goredforwomen.org.
Welcome back to the V. And welcome, Claire.
Thank you, thank you. I'm sorry, I had some children duties early this morning
Claire
for
Reed,
Sunday school.
we understand. At any given Sunday, anything can go wrong. George Wallace Jr. is just a charming man, and really, really, the things he shared about his dad were very meaningful, don't you think?
He is a very old friend of mine, and I have always thought that he is probably, he loves his state, he loves the country. He's got great stories. He's a gentle spirit. He got part of his dad's fire, but most of his mom's gentleness. I mean,
yeah, and it's just a real shame that he's not in elected office. I mean,
know.
he served as a state treasurer, but I'm just really sad.
And he served on the public service
Right,
commission.
public service. But he was a good statesman for the state. And his book, the book about his father, I think it's great. And as I mentioned, I think once before, my children said, they heard him on the radio and said, "Is that George Wallace?" Because my child had just finished fourth grade in Alabama history, and so excited to learn
Well,
about him.
it's just great to meet him. He's a wonderful man. He really does a great job representing his family. Something that's not representing the family so well this week is the ouster at ASU, Alabama State University.
There's a hornet's nest over there always. No pun intended.
Well, tell us what happened, Claire. I mean, that was a big deal, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, you know, I think Elton Dean, who was a county commissioner in Montgomery County, was on the Board of Trustees. I think he did the right thing by stepping down.
Right.
Now you've got a circuit judge from over in West Alabama, Mr. Wiggins, who is clearly with the SACS regulations and employing his family and wife and children. The governor's removed him from the board, which he should have done, and there's some legal ruckus and some things they're doing, and they're holding rallies, and it's out of control. Like I said, it's a hornet's nest, but what do you think legally?
Well, legally, I'm concerned for the governor, honestly. I think Judge Wiggins probably will take some legal action. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think the more practical question is, if they hold a board meeting next week or 2 weeks from now, and Judge Wiggins shows up, is a majority of the board going to recognize him as the chairman of the board? I'm hearing that they will.
So if they recognize him as the chairman, that's just a slap in Governor Bentley's face,
But
right? Then
It would look bad for the governor.
But technically, if the governor's at the meeting, he's the chairman of the board.
Well, he's the president of the board.
President.
Yeah.
So, and it's also interesting, since all this has happened in the last week and a half, there are now sticking pins at the president board trying to get rid of her.
Yeah.
And we know they would only be doing that if she was doing the right thing. If she was going along with them, they wouldn't be doing that.
That's
But
exactly
she's in
right.
there
It's
trying to
just
clean up the hornet's nest.
At least Elton Dean did the right
Yeah, he
thing.
did.
Marvin Wiggins, I mean, he ought to go.
Well, the thing is, this crisis over there is really, has been going on for some time, and there's an investigation going on in Montgomery County by the Attorney General, headed by Chris McCool, who's one of the best DAs in the state.
Yeah, and let me say this for the record, as many people know. And let's praise Governor Bentley, because quite frankly, all these other governors have sat on their fingers and have never done anything about ASU and what's gone on there for many years.
Well, it's been a vote bartering system where you give ASU the money they want, and if you're in the leadership, you get their votes on bills that you need them for.
You're right. And the taxpayers of this state ought to be concerned about this, because this is their money funding this college where people are sitting in there taking care of their family members, their children, and then
getting judgments against them for sexual harassment.
yeah,
I
and
wonder
then
who paid that.
and then they did this slush fund and went on and transferred money for $100,000 for travels and perks for board people, and then brought it up to the board after the fact that they have done that. I'm sorry, that's egregious in my mind, and the taxpayers should know about
and
this.
it should be, absolutely. Well, it's just it is, like you said, it's a crazy situation. Their mascot's the Hornets. Now we got a hornet's nest over there. You know, they're talking about bringing juvenile immigrants or illegal aliens to Maxwell Air Force Base. How do you think that's going to go over with the folks in Montgomery?
Well, it doesn't go over well with the folks in Montgomery at all. A lot of people have spoken out against Roby did and Mo Brooks. I think Mayor Strange, but I may be a weird Republican, but I don't have a real problem with it. I mean, you want our immigration people to round them up at the borders. We did. Now what do? People say send them back. Where do we send them? We don't know where they go.
Yeah.
And these are children. These are juveniles.
Well,
okay.
yeah.
And it's
some
not
of them
as
are.
easy as just saying send them back. We
Yeah,
have
well, I mean,
treaties and things. We have laws we have to follow.
Well, we have a law that they require a due process hearing. Everybody that comes in has to get a hearing before they're deported. And if you're deporting a 6-year-old and their family's not with them, who are you turning that 6-year-old over to?
Well, you know, if
drug
we had
cartel?
good border enforcement imposed out of Washington, this may have never been a problem.
It may not have happened. The big concern I have as a Montgomery County resident is that there is a plan in place. The wheels are turning to put these children that they're going to bring to Maxwell into the Montgomery County school system. And that raises questions because we're already broke in Montgomery County in our Montgomery County school system. It's already underfunded. It's already understaffed. And now you're going to add how many children? 10, 20, 100, 1,000? I mean, we don't know.
We don't know how many kids are coming, do we?
Well, for the most part, most people that have children in Montgomery County have to send their children to private schools because they are so broken here.
Right.
But there is I think there's an international school, McMillan, I believe, that's somewhere out there by the basin. Maybe they're talking about putting them in that facility, in that school.
It's a terrible situation that has just not been addressed by this administration, and frankly, not that well addressed by the previous administration.
You go previous 5 administrations. I mean, it's never been addressed. It's a wide open, porous border. And as the economy in the world rises and falls, the number of people coming rises and falls. But there's always a steady increase into the country from the southern border.
We got about 1 minute left. We caught a picture this week of Mike Hubbard's criminal defense attorney having drinks with AL.com columnist John Archibald. It was a lovely picture we were able to print at ALreporter.com. Did you like the picture, Claire?
I did like it, and I was wondering when you were going to get to have a drink with Mark White as well.
I would like to have a drink with him, but I think he would throw it in my face.
You'd have a better chance of having a drink with John Archibald.
Hey, he ought to buy you a drink. You have run up quite the legal bill for him.
Well, I've helped him make a few bucks, I think.
You have.
John
He owes you that.
Archibald's a good guy. He's a good writer. I don't blame him for having
Yeah,
drinks
but
with him.
clearly he's trying to take justice in the press, in the media, as opposed to in the courtroom where it belongs.
Well, they want to try this thing in the press or have the press co-opted. It was nice to have a picture of John. We like him. Listen, you've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch us every day at ALreporter.com and every Sunday on your ABC affiliate. Happy Sunday, and thanks for watching.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. It makes our poor hearts grieve. Wait till Porcino learns what's up our sleeves. Oh, what a tangled web. Oh, what a tangled web. Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka, the perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.